Hi everyone. Welcome back to Misinformation in Science and Society. Here to listen, not to judge. I'm your host Annie, and today with us we have PhD Priya Donti.
Hi, Annie. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So, let's just get started. So, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Priya Donti. I recently finished my PhD at Carnegie Mellon in computer science and public policy. And my thesis work focused on how do we create machine learning models to optimize power grids. The idea being that if we can more dynamically optimize power grids, we can, better integrate renewable energy. But how do we do this in a way that respects the physics and hard constraints associated with power grids and are necessary to respect in order to actually be able to operate these grids reliably and safely? Um, so then I'm going to be starting as an assistant professor at MIT in about a year to continue a research group working on these kinds of topics. But in the meantime, I'm actually taking a gap year to run a nonprofit that I co-founded during my PhD called Climate Change AI, which basically, yeah, like aims to foster impactful work at this intersection of climate change and machine learning through education, by building a community, and by providing funding and other resources.
Yeah, yeah. So, why did you choose this career initially, like this path? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been interested in working on climate change since high school. Basically, my freshman biology teacher in high school turned the first week of our required biology class into a curriculum on sustainability, and we learned about a bunch of different topics like air pollution, water, and climate change. And what really struck me about climate change at the time is that, climate change is fundamentally an issue of people and an issue of equity, that it's going to exacerbate the inequities that we're already seeing in our society.
Mhm.
And as somebody who grew up in the US, but to parents who are from India, I think it's very it's hard to grow up and not realize basically how wealth is distributed differently around the world, and how disparities really do exist in the world. And so to not only see this issue of climate change as these disparities exist and climate change is going to make them even worse, that really put a fire in my belly to really work on this issue. But I didn't really know how I wanted to work on climate change. Like, even though I knew it was a big issue, I didn't know what it meant to work on it.
Mm.
And so I explored some different options, and I went into college thinking that I was going to maybe become a material scientist and try to create the next generation of efficient solar panels. But when I started undergrad, I really fell in love with computer science. And this put me into a bit of a dilemma because it wasn't at all clear to me at the time how computer science and climate change connected at all.
Mm.
Um, so I decided to just go for it anyway. I did a major in computer science and a minor basically in environmental studies, as well as, pursuing environmental interests through my extracurriculars, and basically thought about, maybe there's a way I can figure out how to bring them together. And then late in my undergrad, I found this position paper by a group of researchers that was called Putting the Smarts in the Smart Grid. And it basically talked about how AI and machine learning would be really critical components of a power grid that would be powered by renewable energy. And so I got really interested in that topic. I actually got something called a Watson Fellowship for the year after my undergrad, where I traveled for a year and interviewed people about power grids. And then I started my PhD working on this topic.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like the whole journey and everything. So what's your like favorite part of like doing what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing I really like, the three things I really like the most about what I work on. Um, so one of them is the vision and the impact. I really am motivated by addressing climate change and sort of I can really get up every morning and really know that there's something that I'm working towards in order to try to help make the world a better place. And
Yeah.
that can be a really motivating vision to be able to wake up to. The other is that I find the sort of nitty gritty, like technical aspects of the work that I do really fun. A lot of my work focuses on how do you bridge, machine learning with concepts from optimization, control, and electric power systems. And these are all topics I independently find fascinating, and it's really interesting to think about how do you combine concepts from these fields as well as additional fields that I'm also really interested in, game theory, markets, and policy, and how do those concepts all really come together in order to address these challenges. So I really like the actual aspects of doing this sort of technical work and really tying it in with the social sciences and policy work and figuring out, how to create methods in this area where the interfaces between these areas are. Um, and then the third thing I really like is the people and the community associated with this work. I feel like there are a lot of people who are really motivated to solve this problem of climate change. And a lot of these people, they're, among like the kindest and most brilliant people that I've met. It's just really like a real pleasure to be working with a lot of these folks. And so that's something that I really have enjoyed both during my PhD research, but also in founding the nonprofit Climate Change AI. I just feel so lucky to get to work with the kinds of people that I get to work with.
Yeah, yeah. So why do you think truth is like so important, and like why do you think misinformation is such a big issue, like especially right now?
Yeah, so I think that as we approach climate action, it's really important to do this in a way that is like scientifically informed, um, and is also equity informed, that we really are centering communities that have really been disadvantaged in the past and not given access to, resources, ownership, all of those kinds of things in the past.
Yeah.
Um, and I think in both of these cases, like, being able to work with the same information is really important when you're trying to do scientifically informed work and make sure that you're actually making progress on these issues in a way that actually makes sense. It maybe is self-explanatory that you want to make sure that the way you're moving forward is actually informed by the knowledge that we have.
Mhm.
Um, from an equity perspective, I think that because doing climate change related work requires bringing together people who are coming from different backgrounds and have different perspectives, it's important to be able to start with a common premise and have a common language around how we actually approach these things. And by common language, I don't mean a spoken language like English or something, but basically some fundamental concepts that are shared about what it means to move forward on this. And I think basically like misinformation can really muddy the waters of being able to move forward in a way that is like based on mutual understanding of what actually needs to be done.
Mhm. Yeah. So would you say like there's like a lot of misinformation in like climate change, like this your field? If so, like how do people like in the field try to like avoid or like tackle
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll have to give the caveat, I don't specifically work on like climate communication or climate information or misinformation. So this isn't my specific area. But I would say that for sure, I mean, as we've seen kind of a rise in the role that like algorithms play in social media, in how we search for information.
that?
A lot of the things that we see and do online are very much filtered by aspects related to our location and our perspectives as expressed through like prior searches. And so there is, and then also, social media platforms tend to optimize for engagement rather than any measure of truth. And so something that is more inflammatory and then false potentially often has the ability to gain more traction. And so these lead to things like misinformation potentially spreading on, for example, social media platforms, but also whether it's misinformation or just a filter on your information, sort of the information that each of us sees and interacts with is very different from each other on a day-to-day basis. So there are people who are working on some aspects of this. So for example, researchers who are thinking about how do you actually detect misinformation on social media platforms, for example, and actually take it down.
Mhm.
Um, but some of these issues I think are, you know, we need a larger conversation in society. You know, what are the way how is the fact that we are all seeing different information online affecting and that different information is being filtered to us, like our world view is a bit, our world is a little bit different when it comes to the internet. How do you still kind of form consensus or have conversations that are again founded on these like same fundamental like conceptual understandings when in some sense the online experiences that we have are fundamentally like fragmenting us in various ways.
For sure, yeah. So what would you say is like the worst type of like misinformation? Like about what? Like just
Um,
misinformation in general.
I think I mean, that's a hard question to answer because it depends a bit on, I mean, I guess it always depends on when you can when people consume information, right? Like what kinds of effects does it cause? So it causes things like people's sentiments or their feelings towards something being changed.
Mm,
um, it also contributes towards certain decisions being made or certain actions being taken. So
mhm.
rather than pointing to a very specific example, maybe the thing I'll point out is basically that I think the most harmful types of misinformation are the ones that cause us to make the wrong decisions, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so would you say, what would you think, if there is a best way, is sorry, is there like a best way to like eliminate or like avoid or reduce information? If so, like, what would it be, or like what are like the top ways like you would say would help with that?
I mean, like I said, I don't like work in the like misinformation
Yeah.
area, so I'm not necessarily the best qualified person to answer this.
Mm,
Um, but um, I mean, there are different schools of thought here. One of these is definitely education, right?
mhm,
Making sure that a larger proportion of the population sort of has access to the knowledge, the tools, the critical thinking skills to be able to engage with information productively and produce information responsibly.
mhm.
um and so that's fundamental, right? I think like educating people and having like, you know, having us all like speak this common language, or speak not a common language. I think diversity of perspectives is really important, but having sort of a base level understanding of the science of what it means to engage with media critically, all of those things is really important. um and then there are many other things associated with, you know, how do you, there, you know, technological tools that try to address misinformation, again, by like doing things like detecting it on social media and taking it down. But
Mhm.
there's also, you know, a lot of governance related things that can be done to actually like regulate or misinformation or measure like or detect when it's occurring. So lots of different things like that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think those are some really good points. I think that's actually all my questions about like misinformation. So just for fun, like do you have like a role model or like who that like inspire you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, but one person I definitely point to is Carla Gomes. She is the founder of an initiative called the Computational Sustainability Network.
Mhm,
And she basically like when she started her line of work, there was this notion in the research realm that like you could either do work that was methodologically interesting
mhm,
or you could do work that was societally impactful, but that it wasn't possible to do both at the same time. And I think Carla really showed and proved that this worldview did not make sense, that there were a lot of interesting like research challenges in computer science that needed to be addressed in order to tackle some of our most pressing sustainability challenges. And it's
Mhm.
only by actually working on those sustainability challenges that you understand what those things are. If you work on social media, you work on different things, the way you develop your methods is going to look really different because you're working on different problems. Whereas if you're trying to tackle very hard sustainability problems, then the way you develop your methods will be driven by that. So I think that Carla did a really awesome job kind of opening this up and saying, look, I can do really methodologically interesting work that also has a huge impact on many different sustainability areas. And I think that's been a huge inspiration to a lot of people who work in this broader space since.
Yeah, I think that's actually so interesting. Um, so just to like close out, do you have any advice for people, especially like teens, either like about information, climate change kind of, and like, or just like in general?
Yeah, so I'd say that when like climate change is a really interdisciplinary area. And addressing it means that you have to be able to really think about like how do different technologies interact with each other and how do technologies interact with like behavioral science, or how does behavioral science interact with policy, or like how do all of these things interact. You're constantly needing to think about not just like one specific technology or one specific behavioral science question, but really what is the broader system
Mhm.
that needs to change in order for us to make progress. And so from a young age, I would say it's really important to expose yourself to the different perspectives that are enable you to think in this sort of in this way, really like take classes in different topics, engage with a wide variety of people, like not like try to engage with people who are not just, you know, the people who might be in your own, say, high school class or live near you, but
Mhm.
really try to engage with people from a broad range of perspectives in terms of ages, locations, like all of that kind of thing, and really expand your ability to understand like the broader system in which you're working and kind of make connections between the different parts of it, because I think that kind of like cross-cutting interdisciplinary thinking is really necessary to make progress.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
that. So I think that will be it for this interview. Thank you so much again. It was really nice talking with you.
Yeah, nice chatting with you too.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.